Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bob Lovegren. This is Media Watch. I was asking a question here. I guess I got interrupted there. I got interrupted myself, actually. Anyway, yes, we are Rob Raffelli and myself, Bob Lovegren. We talk about the media, different shows, the different news items. Like I say, I always say the news cycle is every day, basically. You have to have the news to sell those pillows. And anyway, so people will watch. You can't keep repeating the same old thing over again. I guess today, O.J. Simpson died. And I'm sure that I haven't seen any TV so far that they'll be on it, but I bet they'll be talking about that when I go home and turn the TV set on and so on. Anyway, that's what we talk about. Let's get started. What's the first area?
Well, even before actually, the first thing I'll be doing is about Ecuador and Mexico having a little dust up, and that's something I haven't seen on the news, but
yeah.
I found it online and it's pretty good. But I just wanted to, since you mentioned O.J. Simpson, I've already seen something posted by somebody that I knew in junior high, and it said, it may be a little early for an O.J. Simpson joke, but I'll take a stab at it.
Take a stab at it.
So, as some of us like to say, too soon?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it's all over with all these social media sites and so on. Got an opinion.
Since I'd actually like to do this particular bit of news, all I need to do is find my picture. There we go. So here's the thing about, in case you don't know this, we have Mexico and Ecuador. They're not at war. They're just kind of at cross purposes here. The background is that Ecuador had a vice president who
ex-vice president.
Yeah, he's now an ex-vice president. He was convicted of corruption, and he went over to the Mexican embassy and said, "I'd like political asylum."
And the Mexican embassy in Ecuador.
Yeah, right, in Quito, Ecuador, in the capital city of Ecuador, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so he went to the Mexican embassy in Ecuador, and he said, "I'd like political asylum." And they said, "Okay, we'll give it to you." And as it turns out, the Ecuadorians were really ticked about that. How ticked? They sent police into the embassy, which is, as you know, a major league no-no. But they sent them into the embassy and they pulled the guy out. And now Mexico, the last I heard, but that was only this morning, had broken off relations with Ecuador because you don't go busting into people's embassies.
Right.
Anyway,
that reminds me of the guy that what they called WikiLeaks or whatever it was.
Of Julian Assange.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it involves one of the same countries.
Yeah. Let's just throw in a little Assange backgrounder there.
Yeah.
This is, God, I can't even tell how.
In case you don't remember.
I don't even know how long ago this was, but Assange published a bunch of leaked Pentagon stuff. And mostly, everybody's tried to say that he, in publishing some secret stuff, got some people killed. I'm not sure who he got killed, but mostly, what the real problem here was that he embarrassed and exposed the lies of a bunch of stuff. This had to be in the Obama administration because it was about Hillary Clinton during her time as Secretary of State. Yeah. Anyway, basically, what happened there was that he embarrassed some very powerful people. And people were yelling things like that he should be convicted of treason. And I'm looking at that, because I'm not saying I like the exposure, but saying treason, it's kind of hard to be treasonous to the United States when you're not an American. Julian Assange is an Australian national, and he's been all over the place. He was given some stuff by
a sergeant or somebody in the military. That's how they got the notes.
Yeah, in fact, that person has
in jail.
And he also, I think he's actually been released finally, but he was transitioned. He became a she and became Chelsea Manning. I can't remember what his original first name was, but anyway, most of the information came from him. So at least he was an American who had an oath to keep our secrets. I would say an Australian national is not one of those.
Right.
But anyway, so they did their go-to. So here was Assange in the UK, and they got some.
Well, let's step back though. He was convicted of something in Sweden, or not? They were trying to get him to. They held him, didn't they, somewhere or other? The Swedes had actually jailed him for a while. Then he ended up in England somehow or other.
Okay, I was not aware of the Swedes jailing him. What I was aware of was that it was a couple of Swedish women. A couple of Swedish women supposedly had said that he had sexually assaulted them, and that was why Sweden was saying, "Hey, we want the UK to send him back." Of course, those Swedish women recanted and have said, "No, they kind of made us say that stuff, and he didn't do that to us." So, and as soon as he was out for a few minutes, he rushed to, let's not always have the same hands, but to the Ecuadorian embassy, in this case,
in England.
in England, and he stayed in the Ecuadorian embassy for years, and finally he was given up recently. I'm not sure what, by now he's been in one of the nastiest prisons in the UK for several years, still not convicted of a crime.
Right, yeah.
In fact,
and the U.S. is trying to extradite him.
Yeah.
But they said that not if you have if there's a penalty that you cannot execute him. You can't be executed and so on. But, but there's a little side story to it. They're leery about bringing him over there at all.
Yeah,
a lot of people over there don't think he did anything either. Yeah,
the UK is saying, as an excuse, really, unless you take execution off the table, we won't let you have him. But of course, it would be nothing for them to take execution off the table.
Yeah.
I can think of,
But what I'm saying is, even if they do, they'll find another reason to keep him. The guy's been out. Well, he hasn't been out, but they've managed to avoid being taken to. In fact, he probably, if he ever got to the United States, Donald Trump was president, he would.
He might pardon him.
Yeah, pardon him right off the bat.
Well, I'd also like to see him pardon Snowden.
Yeah.
Now, you recall, because like me, you're old. You recall Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the so-called Pentagon Papers.
Yeah.
And of course, those were published by the New York Times, and it embarrassed the Pentagon quite a lot. But the left loved him, but of course, he embarrassed a Republican president. Now, unfortunately for Assange, he embarrassed a Democratic president.
Right. So that doesn't have much to do with left and right so much as when they did it, who was president at the time, and so on.
It would seem to be.
And all that bureaucracy, all of the CIA and FBI and all these different people saying, "Oh my God, this guy's let's get our hands on him."
Yeah, and because it feels so personal.
As you say, they got embarrassed.
Yeah, it feels personal and vindictive rather than addressing directly damage done. Yeah. And for that matter, if some foreign national hears, I hear that the Pentagon did X, Y, and Z, whether it's true or it's false, you think you get to say what you heard. And in fact, treason is actually levying, if you're an American, treason is levying war against the United States.
Yeah.
Or giving aid and comfort to our enemies.
Yeah.
And I assume that those would be not folks who don't like us, but enemies in war. And as it turns out, I don't know what enemies those would have been that Assange embarrassed people. Yes, clearly.
I don't want to get too deep into this, but there's another guy that's living in Russia right now.
Yeah, no, that's Snowden. I'd also like to see him pardoned. One of these days I'll have to show the video of Snowden doing an interview with John Oliver, because what he's talking about is how to make a strong password.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty good. It's only a few minutes, and he explains how to make a strong password. And it turns out that it's not the way that people usually suggest. People are usually saying, well, it should be 8 to 10 characters long, and it should have an Egyptian hieroglyph and a pound sign. He says it's not that stuff, because that stuff is much too easily broken because it's not very long. You can brute force it. He says what you want is something long, easy to remember, but because it's long, this
is before all his troubles.
No, he was already, I think, in Russia at the time, but he did it like he zoomed in an interview with John Oliver. So in fact, his example, or maybe John Oliver's example was something like, Margaret Thatcher is 110% sexy. and
110%.
110% sexy.
Okay.
So the thing is, it's long. It's not it has numbers and a percent sign and stuff like. But the great thing about it is nobody guesses it, and it's too long for a brute force attack.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was
not
great.
not like the movies where the hero always gets the password within a few seconds.
Yeah, that
Bullshit.
Yeah, and
excuse me. That's not.
And when people get passwords quickly, it's because the password is really, really weak. I can't tell you how many people use 1 2 3 4 5 or password, where they think they're being really clever. So it's password, except they change one of the vowels. Yeah, that doesn't take long to break at all.
Okay, all right.
But
there's probably a program where you can go through all those things just to see if they'll work.
There are giant, basically password dictionaries of all the most likely stuff to try, and you try the most likely stuff first because you win the most often.
Yeah.
Anyway, you get the picture. There's people get embarrassed with.
It's sort of funny that now Ecuador is looking. Well, of course they went. Well, the point being, of course, that the Mexican, the Ecuadorian authorities went into the Mexican
into the embassy.
Embassy, Ecuador's embassy in wherever. In
Quito.
There, so on. Whereas these other ones, what's the other guy? He's been living in these different places in the Ecuador embassy in England for a long time.
Quite a few years. But now he's been several years in one of the UK's nastiest prisons.
Oh, really? I thought this just happened actually, but I guess I'm wrong.
Time flies.
No, I think that the most recent news that I saw was that they applied for extradition, U.S. one of them. But then the British said, no, you can't, with the proviso that we'll give them, but I got the feeling when the article is, they were delaying it. They didn't really come to that decision until recently.
Yeah, they probably don't want to give him up. The joke we told in high school was, you asked a girl to a dance and she says, I can't go, I have a roast in the shower. And of course, that doesn't make any sense, but when you don't want to do something, any excuse is good.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I have a roast in the shower.
Anyway.
All right. So
what's next?
I think I wanted to touch on some more of when people are treated gently and when they aren't. And I think, we'll do these. There's two of them. First, here's something where I'm going to contrast two guys with similar crimes.
Yeah.
In that, what each of them did was they drove a car or a truck into a crowd. Each of them killed one and injured about 22. So one of them, this guy over here on your side, he isn't getting any jail time, by the way. But his reason for his reason for driving into the crowd was he just wanted to kill them all.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this other guy here is. You remember Charlottesville and the protests, and we'll actually touch on something else about there. Yeah. That was James Alec Fields here, who was, according to him at least, fleeing a crowd that wanted to harm him, but he wound up going down a street where he hit and killed someone and injured 22 others.
Yeah.
His sentence is life plus 419 years.
Is that right?
So, and for all I know, he deserves it, but he says, I was fleeing. This other guy says, I just wanted to kill them all.
They killed them all, and he got off.
But right,
they let him go.
I think he might have even been convicted, but no jail time.
The difference here is New York City and Virginia, somewhere in Virginia.
Well, they managed to turn that one into some sort of gigantic hate crime-ish thing. Yeah. And again, I don't know that it wasn't. But
let's face it, doing something in L.A. now or in New York City and places like that, they're punching girls. Women walking down the streets, people just walk up and punch them, and it's got a lot of publicity, and but of course they don't catch the guy and so on.
Yeah,
somebody's walking. I don't know how you're living in New York City these days. My God, man, it's dangerous to walk the streets.
I might even have.
You heard the story too about in Berkeley, students' parents are now hiring their own security guards.
Wow.
To follow their child around the campus and so on. They're so scared that something's going to happen to them. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, actually,
little things like that, boy, that it really adds up. And like I say, You know, they are like the Democrats like to say that we have all that under control and all this and that and so on, and I don't think it is.
So since you mentioned the punching in the face thing,
yeah, okay.
So this is sort of what we've got is some
guy punch him in the
defund the police and Black Lives Matter and so far I think
this probably has to do with the punching women in the thing. That's what this cartoon.
Yeah, that's what that's
it's gotta
about.
Be recent, right?
Yeah. This cartoon is from the other day.
Yeah.
But this is where I look at this stuff and I say,
because I don't think the women actually talked to these guys.
No, I don't think they did.
Yeah.
But I do think that they
get the point, right?
Yeah, we get the point.
Make you feel like it, maybe, right? I get that feel. You don't talk to people like that.
No, none of them have been talking to their assailants. Some of them do commit the one of the sins. I think you can. I don't think you should be punched for it, but they're walking down the street looking at their phone, and
looking at what?
Looking at their phone.
Oh, phone. Yeah.
So
right.
The expression that we like to use is situational awareness.
Well,
you need to know what's around you.
First of all, we assume that they did, but that may not have. I didn't. The one woman that I heard interviewed, I don't know. She didn't talk to the fact that she was talking on her phone, but that could be, and that may be the motivation for the person to hit him. Give them a hit. For some reason, they don't like people walking on the street with their phone.
There you are walking down the street.
That you see it all the time. For example, I'll give you a good example of it. At UCSB, when a class lets out, they walk out talking on their phones. There was one class, it was like 30 or more than that, like a couple hundred people, and in this one classroom, and everyone I'm walking out was talking on their cell phone as they walked out the door.
Okay, so I'm going to touch again on different treatment for things that would otherwise seem similar. Now, currently we're hearing that there was a parade in Kansas City, and there were some guys who started, they shot people in the crowd.
Right.
Okay,
yeah. That's recently, yeah.
Those are young men. We know, in fact, they're under 18. And the news folks, they say, well, we can't tell you their names because they're under 18.
Yeah.
Okay, so my thought is just that I can show you some guys who are under 18 whose names you splashed all over the news and made life difficult.
Exactly.
Here is Kyle Rittenhouse was under 18, and he shot 3 guys who were trying to kill him. Here's Nicholas Sandmann was under 18.
Just stop for a minute then. This is the guy that shot the people up in Wisconsin.
This was
Kenosha, Wisconsin.
In Kenosha, that's right.
They riot, they came after him at night and so on, and he shot him.
He shot, but in one case he was on the ground, and the guy that he shot was in fact bringing up a gun to shoot him.
Yeah.
In one case, he'd been clocked in the head with a skateboard. And by the way, a lot of rioters, they like the skateboard thing. You can do a lot of damage to somebody smacking them.
Yeah, you can kill somebody.
Yeah, with a skateboard, but you're not carrying a weapon. Yeah. So they like to feel like they're in the clear somehow. Anyway, he shot 3 guys, 2 of them died. And but every one of them, I looked and I said, they pursued him, and every one of them was trying to kill. This guy had the most discipline. I mean, not sure that I could have the discipline he did. Not only did he shoot people who were trying to kill him, but he never shot them until they tried to kill him. And once he'd hit them, he didn't fire again. Yeah. So, some people would just look.
That's what
lots of people
that's
just
what I would have done.
In self-defense. Some people empty the magazine. Heck, cops often empty the magazine, and I think that it's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But this guy only shot somebody who was trying to kill him, and the moment they were ineffective, he stopped.
Yeah.
So that's pretty disciplined. Now, Nick Sandmann, this was the guy who was wearing a MAGA hat.
This is a really bad one.
Right,
although, as you said, Ted, he collected on that one. But go ahead.
Yeah, he did. But he's wearing a MAGA hat. He and his friends were all underage. Some guy who supposedly was an Indian, perhaps he is, came over and wanted to drum and get in his face, and he really got in his face. Got in his face, and yet the people on the news, they named him, and they were saying, doesn't this kid have the most punchable face in the country?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That one I did hear that. Yeah. Exactly.
One of the people who said that was Bill Maher.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this guy has said nothing, done nothing, approached no one.
Yeah.
Yet here he is, a minor.
Never said a word.
He's a minor with his image and name being splashed all over the place. Well, God bless him.
Just because he's wearing that hat, all right?
Yeah, they hated that. So I'm going to say good for him. He collected an undisclosed but very large sum from CNN and several others. And now here's this last guy.
For naming him. But basically bringing up his name. He's under 18.
Yeah.
That's part of the deal right there.
And they were basically saying that he was an awful person for nothing.
In fact, I think I saw him interviewed, and he said he couldn't go anywhere without people, harassing him basically.
Yeah, yeah.
They knew who he was.
You're that kid.
Yeah.
This last one, he was even funnier. This is a football fan. He's a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
And the Kansas City Chiefs colors are black and red. And he's a major fan with the Kansas City Chief colors wearing, and then wearing the colors on his face.
Right.
And one of the cameramen, who could see perfectly well what he was, lined up on the black side of his face, and they put this out as, look at this kid wearing blackface. What the hell does he think he's doing?
So that's why we do this show, basically. That's when the media want to do a certain thing. In fact, we should go over to that Charlotte one too, because I know that we had the thing about at the Congress, this guy talks about it.
Oh, yeah.
And then he says, here's what the Congress heard, and this is what he actually said. In fact, it was something like in reality.
I've got that one. Yeah. And people who don't know about this, they really need to. This is what Scott Adams and a lot of the rest of us call the fine people hoax, because this is where they want to say that that Donald Trump called neo-Nazis fine people.
That's what you hear all about it. He said that they weren't to blame. Whatever it was, they weren't to blame.
And it was really.
And he said that Donald Trump was saying, that's what they did, quote him, that it's two groups basically.
Yeah. Now I'm going to play
something
this.
to say about that, in fact.
This line traveled
this is over a minute, but bear with us.
And ended up on the Senate floor. The Charlottesville lie. Very fine people on both sides. Except that isn't all he said. And they knew it then, and they know it now. Watch this.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
I said Robert E. Lee.
George Washington was a slave
Robert E.
owner.
Lee, okay, I'm sorry.
Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
I'm sorry, I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press has treated white nationalists unfairly?
No.
I just didn't understand what you were saying.
No. There were people in that rally that I looked the night before. If you look, there were people protesting very quietly the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. I'm sure in that group there were some bad ones. The following day it looked like they had some rough, bad people. Neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them. But you had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest, and very legally protest, because, you know, I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit. So I only tell you this, there are two sides to a story. I thought what took place was a horrible moment for our country. A horrible moment. But there are two sides to the country. Does anybody have a final? Does anybody have, you have an infrastructure.
What makes you think? This might be today the first time the news networks played those full remarks in their context.
Yeah. C-SPAN, see that they do, you know, that's one good thing about C-SPAN. They're not prejudiced against one side or the other. They do stuff, and there's no commercials. By the way, they don't have any commercials. Let me correct a couple of things there. Number one, Robert E. Lee did not own slaves. His wife owned slaves. and the plantation was the other side of the river in Washington, D.C., which now is the cemetery. What's it called?
Arlington.
Arlington Cemetery. Sorry. And it's the city of Arlington. The Arlington Cemetery. That was her estate. And also, for Robert E. Lee, he didn't get into to become the said general. He was an army general before the war started. Of course, he was American, worked for the American Army. He was a general, but he didn't make a decision to secede or work for the Confederacy till very late. Virginia was one of the last states to actually secede from the Union. And that was only after Fort Sumter happened, and he did it because he was loyal to his state, not necessarily to the country. And of course, what is an officer in the United States Army. So, and like I also want to say one more thing here. Monuments. I was thinking about that the other day. They want to tear down monuments all the time and so on. Monuments are put up so that you can remember something that shouldn't have happened, that wouldn't happen in present society, hopefully. Something like that. So that's what it tells a story. If you wipe that monument out, what you're trying to do is wipe out history, that it didn't happen. Well, that's not the case. It did happen. There are all kinds of monuments like that. They got one in Georgia, I believe it is. It's carved into the side of the mountain. It's a monstrous thing. It's carved into the cliff. Maybe it's up in Tennessee somewhere. Maybe I can't remember exactly. But they want to knock that down. It's got an image of Robert E. Lee on it and all that. Well, you know, you got it. If anything you want to remember about history is you want to remember the details of the Civil War. But exactly what happened. For example, one of the candidates for the Republican, Nikki Haley, didn't mention slavery as a cause for the Civil War. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't all civil. It was states' rights, and slavery was in it. And then they talk about, well, it was, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. No, he did not. The Emancipation Proclamation was a document that freed the slaves in the Confederacy, not in the Union as it existed. Of course, later on, of course, they had the amendments and so on. And as any black person will tell you, it didn't end slavery, it didn't end the abuse for black people, even to this day, for example. I mean, that it still has validity in a lot of places.
I've seen a cute Republican joke where I think it was attributed to Trump, though it wasn't Trump. They just gave him the caption, "I haven't seen Democrats this angry since we took their slaves away."
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because the Republican Party, of course, was founded as an explicitly anti-slavery and an explicitly abolitionist party.
Yeah. And if you look it up, you'll find out that there were actually black people who owned white slaves. They call it indentured servant and so on and all that, but that was as close to slavery as you can get, other than maybe, you know, well, it was slavery too. I mean, that of course is what happened.
All right, I'm going to we're going to pause for just a little bit of humor because this is something I witnessed.
Okay.
Last week I was in
That's because you know all the for you know all the what do you call it? It's a chorus in a song.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what the back of this truck.
That's right. I was at the at Chase because I was going to use the ATM, and there was this truck. I changed its license plate so that I'm not giving away somebody's license plate. But right there on the truck, there he's got the clowns and the jokers thing, and of course it's from the song "Stuck in the Middle with You," as it's Clowns to the left of me, joke is to the right. Here I am stuck in the middle with you. Anyway, I liked it so much I had to take a picture of it and show it around a bit.
And that's the lyrics from some song that you
Yeah,
knew.
it's from Stuck in the Middle with You,
Yeah.
yes. I can't think of who the artist is right now.
Anyway, I want to have one more thing. I had forgotten about this. And I've said this before, even on television and so on. There's a statue. There's a circle of intersections which are roundabouts dedicated to generals in the Civil War. One of which was to a General Thomas, who they call the Rock of Chickamauga, a battle that was fought during the Civil War.
Chickamauga?
Chickamauga, thank you. A small creek, basically, whatever it was, and so on. I think somewhere in Tennessee or somewhere. At any rate, he was a hero for that, and they ended up with a statue of him. It's the Thomas Roundabout there in Washington, D.C. This is a Civil War general. This general was brought up in Tennessee, in Virginia, and in fact, he had to run into his family and had a plantation. His father, I mean, everybody, his family owned slaves, a lot of them basically, cotton or whatever what they were doing. Anyway, he had a plantation. And in fact, I can't remember the slave revolt. It was in 1835. I can't remember the name of the guy, but he was a black man that revolted.
Nat Turner?
Yeah. He killed a bunch of white people. And they ended up killing them and so on. He actually had to try from his home as a child. He had to run away and avoid that. He ended up becoming an officer in the United States Army. He went to West Point. He knew Robert E. Lee was the commandant of the school, and he knew Jackson and Breckinridge and Longstreet and all the generals in the South, the Confederate generals. Knew a lot of obviously he was one of them basically, and so here's a general that has a statue in Washington, D.C., a circle named after him. And he was a Southerner. And in fact, he really was a slave owner himself. Well, they should tear that statue down, it seems to me. No, they shouldn't. He was in the Union Army, not in the Confederate Army, which all those other guys ended up becoming Confederate generals. And he suffered for it. When he died, his sisters, who still owned the plantation in Virginia, would not let him be buried there. He ended up out in the West. He stayed in the Army after the war was over. He was still in the Army. He married a woman from Troy, New York, and that's where he's buried. But this is the history. This is where you get things confused. If I have had that question to people and so on, they say, well, yeah, of course, if he's a Confederate general. I didn't say he was a Confederate general. I said he was a general. And he was not trusted, in fact, even as a Confederate, having been at the story I just told. They didn't trust him as his loyalty to the Union, and he was one of the only very few generals. Most of the Army did, especially in the higher officers, did end up in the Confederate Army. That's how they had an advantage. Robert E. Lee and other generals, whereas Ulysses S. Grant, when the war started, he was selling something in a store in Illinois someplace, and ended up, but he hadn't been to West Point. History is a very you got to be. If anything about this show is about history. Just talking to a woman that was interviewed here today, running for the assembly. History is a very important thing to know. And it doesn't go away. We should learn, some French philosopher said, learn from history. Learn what you did wrong. And slavery is a wrong.
And Huxley, Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, he said that what we learn most from history is that we do not learn from history.
Yeah.
What we learn from history is that we do not learn from history.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But don't learn things and so on. Although That's why monuments should still stay up, that remind you of how bad things could there. The Auschwitz and all those things are now museums in wherever they are in Poland and places like that. People go there. You better learn the lesson that this can happen, especially for Jews.
Good old.
That's another talk about too. I always answer the question of what's happening in Palestine, and they want to do numbers. The 33,000 Palestinians now have been killed and so on. Well, if you want to do numbers, here's a number for you: 6 million. 6 million people. Here's another little story too. I was reading about it today. I'm getting way off the subject, but when Israel, Ben Gurion was in a place where he said to the crowd, "As of this moment, Israel is a nation." You know how long it took Truman, the President of the United States, to recognize Israel as a nation? 11 what? 11 years? No. 11 months? No. 11 hours? 11 days? No. 11 minutes? No. It was 11 seconds. He recognized Israel in 11 seconds. Look it up. You can see for yourself. And why did he do it? The answer again is 6 million. I'm way off the subject, but had to get it off my chest.
All right. And
11 seconds. He was already on the phone probably before he even knew Ben Gurion was going to say what he said.
Yeah, I have a suspicion that he might have been.
By the way, the second one was Monaco or something like that. Some that recognized the Israelis.
Interesting you should say Monaco. The Germans say Monaco, and I know that because I worked with a lot of Germans. We all say Monaco.
Monaco, maybe that's what it is.
But I worked with a lot of Germans in engineering, and they did say Monaco. So I'd have to go. Well, let's see. I know somebody.
I went way off the subject.
I know somebody who worked in Monaco, and he said Monaco.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Monaco. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up something that sometimes you're asked to be specific and to back something up, and I'm really for that. But when something is obvious enough, like you could say, Trump has not been treated the same as other politicians by CNN and the others, and people would tell you, "Oh yeah, what makes you say that? We think we're completely fair. How can you prove that?" So this is the idea I'm going with, is that here's somebody giving these people a warning. Hey guys, watch out for the waterfall. And they're yelling, "Conspiracy theorist, where's your tinfoil hat?" Source? By the way, on Twitter, or X as it's called now, source with a question mark is very common. Of course, people do make up all kinds of the most bizarre stuff, and they assert it, and we're saying, your source is what? Trust me?
Yeah, right, trust me.
I'd like to have a little more to go on that. So I'm sympathetic to both sides here. But
what's a tinfoil hat business? That's supposed to have some meaning?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It has to do with a paranoid belief that the intelligence agencies can use technologies to alter your thinking or interfere with your thinking unless you put on tinfoil, or in this case it would be aluminum, to shield you from the radio waves. Now, nobody has proved to me that they can't, but I think it's a mistake to ridicule those people, but I also don't believe them. I say, let us do the experiment. I'd like to have a bunch of people wearing tinfoil hats and a bunch of people not, and I want to test them to see if you can tell any difference in their thinking. In other words, don't ridicule them, don't support them, perform the experiment.
Yeah. So so I'm not getting the point of it then.
She's calling him a paranoid.
Okay, all right.
She's calling him a paranoid, she's calling him a conspiracy theorist. Yeah. They're all saying, you're making this stuff up, and
Yeah, everything's a conspiracy these days, isn't it?
Well, I always ask the question, by the way, conspiracy theory is itself an expression that was made up by intelligence agencies who wanted to throw shade on people who were catching them.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they may have overthrown that government.
Yeah.
You conspiracy theorist. You didn't catch us, or we got away. Or
basically, let's face it, a lot of people do things on their own.
Sure, but here's one. beginning
maybe,
of,
maybe they think people are going to join him after they kill Kennedy or something like that and so on, but they haven't talked to anybody about it.
all right, beginning of
Nobody
World War
does.
One. Beginning of World War One, we have the assassination of Archduke. Was it Ferdinand?
Yeah,
Franz,
Ferdinand. Yeah,
or Franz Ferdinand?
the heir apparent.
Okay. Now, as it turns out, yes, he was killed by a lone gunman, but that lone gunman turned out to belong to a group that wanted this guy dead. And as it turned out, they had a lone gunman on every street that the Archduke was likely to go down.
Yeah.
So when he went down this guy's street, that lone gunman stepped up to kill him.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you might look at that as, well, actually they had like 47 lone gunmen all ready to go.
Yeah,
so
right.
that is a conspiracy.
That's a conspiracy, right?
And I don't know if you used to watch the X-Files, but there was actually a group of conspiracy theorists in that who helped Fox Mulder and Dana Scully a bunch of times, and they called themselves the Lone Gunmen.
Who is that now?
This was in the X-Files.
X-Files, okay.
Right,
That's
so
a
they
movie, okay. I didn't see it.
So there were these conspiracy theorists who were also good hackers and kept turning up stuff.
Well, of
And-
course,
and-
all TV things have to have a conspiracy theory, so nobody does it by themselves.
Oh, there was one where Mel Gibson is a conspiracy theorist, and then they come after him, and he says, "My God, I was right. I wonder what I was right about."
Yeah, that's probably true.
I subscribe to so many conspiracy theories. I'm not sure which one it was. Let's see. Because we're media guys, I was showing you before, and I want to show everybody now how CNN humiliated themselves. This was for ratings during the total eclipse. So here we have two CNN guys, guy and gal, and he's dressed as the sun, and she's dressed as the moon.
Yeah.
And I can't show you the video here, but I got a shot of it. In fact, as they were going to explain, how is it that you get an eclipse? And so she pirouetted across in front of him so that you could see how the moon eclipsed the sun.
Okay.
And I thought, I'm sort of embarrassed for you.
Well, that's what they have to do, to sell those pillows, I guess, and so on. But you're right about that. And also, quite honestly, Fox and Friends is the same thing. It's kind of hard to get any real news out of it. They do. They always have some kind of buffet, something that all kind of showed as all kinds of food out there or gifts and so on. And one guy was driving something, I don't know, what were they doing? I've forgotten anyway. He had to go out and drive some cars or whatever the heck it is and so on. I don't know. That was not. I didn't consider that news, basically.
Well, it's not. Actually, you want some good news.
What do you get? What do you think? I never asked you this. What do you think that? And I don't have the answer myself. What do you think that you really get a good idea of the news? That there's not biased in any way. Certainly not as biased as all the other places are.
I'd like to look around. Okay, you remember that the Drudge Report used to be pretty balanced, and it had a bunch of conservative and a bunch of liberal sources.
Yeah.
And I think somebody in the Trump administration really insulted Matt Drudge, and he dropped his conservative sources.
Yeah, really?
And he started putting out all sorts of Trump bashing stuff.
Nonetheless, about Donald Trump, he just shut his mouth once in a while.
Sure he could.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would say the Drudge Report is still a good aggregator, in that you can find links to everything, and it's not a bad place to start. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not. I wouldn't go with unbiased, but it's not too bad. Then, for a much more conservative take, there's something called the Bongino Report, put out by Don Bongino.
Yeah, I know.
Or is it Dan Bongino?
I do watch him. I think he has a.
Bongino Report is also an aggregator. It's not as big as Drudge Report, but you got a lot of good stuff there. Yeah. I'm actually finding all sorts of fun things from every viewpoint on Twitter/X.
Yeah.
So I mean, you'd be amazed at how much news you get there. I happen to like Tucker Carlson, and he ain't no genius, but he will entertain all sorts of interesting ideas, and he has very interesting guests, and you can get the long form.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend this much time, but we all know about the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Rogan sometimes I'm not sure I want to hear that much of any of these guys. But what's amazing about him is, here the guy was basically, he was a mixed martial artist, and but he's good with a long interview, and he lets people
Talk, yeah.
talk. He runs
And
with
he
it.
has other people on. He doesn't have just the guys
Yeah.
that he knows what they're going to say.
And he lets them go a long way, and then he asks difficult questions. And he's not trying to destroy them.
Yeah.
He's saying, well, if this and this, how do you get there? How do you address it? When people bring this up, he would do that probably with a flat earther.
Yeah.
You get to tell them, and you say, well, when people criticize that, what do you do? But if you like the long form, the interesting thing about the guy is, this isn't. You and I used to watch Bill O'Reilly, and
Yeah.
Bill O'Reilly would have some interesting people, including people I disagreed with, on his show. But what I hated about it was that he was cutting them off.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
Like Kennedy does now.
yeah, I think exactly. You've got the freaking Secretary of the Treasury here. I may not agree with him, but I'd like to hear the Secretary of the
He has to
Treasury
say, right.
say his piece. Don't cut him off as like he's gotten one clause out and you're already not
Yeah,
gonna
right.
Let him say his piece. It may be more nuanced. He may have something. So I appreciate folks who will let the opposing viewpoint say their piece, so you can actually
Right.
like it's like being in a debate where, okay, this 2.5 minutes is yours,
Yeah.
and I don't cut you off during those 2.5 minutes. In my 2.5, I may address it, but you get to say your piece.
Yeah, right. That's the idea, though. It's like I said, number one, it's people give them the right of free speech, get them so they know what they're saying, because number one, you have a right of free speech, but I also have the right to listen. And I don't have to listen to stuff like that if I don't agree with it. That's why sometimes I'll take CNN and I'll take business channel, Fox Business channel, and so on. Get this, you switch back and forth to see, you get what, and it's telling the same story, but you don't really know which one to believe. Well, you get both viewpoints basically.
Well, why don't I bring you somebody you can't believe?
Okay.
Sometimes I refer to
all career politicians. By
sometimes
the way.
I refer to the guy in the middle as Resident Biden, because he's at least the resident of the White House, and he's right there between the actual president and the Speaker of the House.
What about the stand? Why is Pelosi standing like that? She looks like she's standing at attention.
This is a shorty, but I want you to hear what it is that Biden has to say, so I'm going to play him now.
Go ahead.
He doesn't care about science and reason. Remember, during the pandemic, Donald Trump told us to inject ourselves with bleach. He said there's nothing to worry about if you do that.
So, okay, show of hands, all you at home or everywhere. How many of you think that Donald Trump actually told people to inject themselves with bleach? Because I happen to have listened to the entire bit that he was talking about, and he was talking about various ways of disinfecting, and he specifically was referring to like ways to get at the virus, and he was mentioning things that people were trying, and somebody was infected, since this is a respiratory illness, and there was actually some folks doing some interesting research with a catheter that they could slide through the bronchial passages, and it would irradiate very lightly with ultraviolet, which would kill the virus. Now, as it turned out, that didn't turn out to be a great way to go, but the things he was throwing out, we got ideas about this, we got ideas about that. He wasn't saying, Donald Trump didn't say he was the scientist. He didn't say this was the way to go. He says, "Wait, we got to try stuff."
Well, he's he said a lot of things and so about how the virus and so on. But I always like to say about that is Donald Trump. He did it quick, and I'm not too sure about that. I've talked to Judy Mikovits, and some of that stuff is the vaccines they did come up with did cure a lot of were there. But they did it normally they take some 10 years or more to get a valid virus vaccine against a particular virus. But this one did less than a year. It was about 6 months, something like that, and so on. And they were whatever worked. Then it was he got unelected on Tuesday. And by Friday, they had approved the elections, and Mr. Biden, the President of the United States, took total credit for that. And had just been elected. He wasn't even inaugurated yet. When he did get inaugurated, they had already vaccinated like 3 million people and so on. And he took credit for that. And in fact, talk about news being changes. They now same number of people have died from viruses and not necessarily COVID. I don't even follow it that close and so on. More people have died in his administration than died in Donald Trump's time in office because of the thing. They played that up, of course. They were really counting that one. Anyway, we got about 7 minutes here.
Well, we absolutely have to hear actress Jennifer Lewis. She is. Everybody likes Hollywood people because is there anything the Hollywood people don't know?
Yeah, right.
Well,
that's what gets me.
She can predict the future and read Donald Trump's mind. So you shouldn't.
This one I don't know that.
Yeah,
one.
You should not miss Jennifer Lewis. So I'm going to bring her up, and she's got some stuff to say, if a little bit foully.
Okay.
As soon as he takes the oath, he will have generals walk down the steps of the Capitol. He will take a hammer and break the glass where the Constitution is, and he will tear it up in our faces. And say, now, I'm the king of the fucking world.
Who is she? She's an actress?
She's an actress. I forget what all she's been in.
He will punish everybody that didn't vote him. Let me tell y'all how I know this shit. I know it because I know what mental illness looks like.
She has a mirror.
That mania is unstoppable.
Trump? Is she talking about Trump now?
She's
right?
talking about Trump.
Yeah.
See, this motherfucker's Hitler.
Well, that was lovely, but...
he didn't come to play.
Oh, I like that line.
What did she say last time?
The last line was, he didn't come to play. And that's actually...
He didn't come to play.
To play. Okay, not everybody has read as many comic books as I have, but there was a terrific, very, very powerful character, Dr. Solar, and somebody says to him, quit playing God. And Solar turns and he says, I'm not playing. Anyway, she's telling you she knows what mental illness looks like.
She reads the comics and all that, right?
Nah, what's going on is,
and they believe, the actresses they get public. Obviously, it's just not. I don't know what that comes out of them. Who she's talking to and who let her have a mic like that.
Somebody was doing an interview with her. She was being interviewed probably about. Some of her actual acting work coming up, but she needed to talk about Trump, and she needed to talk about. She knew what he was going to do, and it was all horrible.
Yeah.
And she knew. How does she know? Because she knows what mental illness looks like.
Yeah.
I follow Scott Adams, who did Dilbert, and Scott Adams he writes some very interesting stuff. Anyway. Adams had said, I had always thought when all these people saying that Trump is Hitler, he said, I figured that if he went 2, 3, 4 years of doing absolutely nothing Hitler-like, that would fade. Yeah. And apparently it hasn't.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, that's whole business about dictator, and they always get this the Nazi business, everything about, and the Republicans call Democrats the same thing. Maybe a little more right there, I don't know. But anyway. But the Constitution is under glass, yes, it's in a museum and so on. By the way, that's not the only copy that was printed. There was a lot of copies were printed, but they saved one and it's under glass, it's protected and so on. I guess that would end it all if you broke the glass. By the way,
there it goes, the magic Constitution.
They have something under glass in Russia too. Lenin, he's under glass. That's who they worship. And go and break that glass. And at the same thing, we do honor the Constitution. Just because you destroy it, it doesn't destroy it. And I'll just say this, getting toward the end of the show here. Democracy, they always say this is the end of democracy. Democracy is always under check. Every election, all the time. We haven't settled down exactly on democracy is defined as the peoples are the governor. That means all the people are governing. Well, they can't all govern at the same time, but that's why we elect individuals to represent us, who may or may not be exactly what we want. Or what's the old line? He's better than the alternative, or
terrible except for the alternatives.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what it's all the time. And this woman here now, this is all. If you elect Donald Trump, it's the end of the world. No, it's not. It'll end after not the world, but it is. We have a time frame. I always tell people, it isn't this election, even the 24 election, that's important. It's the next election in 26, in 28. As long as we have elections, as you know, Rob, I really believe in elections. That's what this is all about, elections. They're messy. They can get sloppy. People make mistakes, as perhaps done when Donald Trump and so on. And the vote count isn't always done right. And there's some skullduggery going on with that all the time. Back in the 1840s, the polling place was a bar in New York City. That's where you voted. And you got a free drink after you voted. And they know how you voted. Anyway, that's my point about this in this regard. This woman. You hear that democracy is about to end and so on. No, it's not. If we have the election, it's the people have spoken. That's how you know what the people want. They do change their mind every 2 years. Obama was elected in 2008, and he had both houses of Congress. 2010, he lost both houses in Congress. 2012, he ran again for president. He was elected, but he still didn't have the Congress. People change their minds. The voters do. That's why I don't believe in polls. What?
I was just thinking that, whether it's democracy or anything else, the question of legitimacy comes up. Now, I want my elections to be secure. Like, if I always have somebody that I'd rather won than didn't. And if my person loses, I want to know that we lost fair and square.
Yeah.
I can live with that.
Yeah.
But it has to be. So I want everything to make our elections more secure, not less secure.
Yeah.
So to me, that means one day on paper.
That's right. The way it was doing it,
and
you had to go to the polls to do it.
And show ID.
Yeah. Anyway, we only got 30 seconds left and so on. So I guess this is the end of the show. Thank you very much for listening. We're getting some people who actually have said that they've watched the show and they like it. It's amazing.
I was actually approached last week and someone told me she liked the show.
Yeah,
especially me.
The show. Especially you. Yeah, you were the one that talked to her.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll see you again.